I've got a special treat for you. But it's 22 minutes, so don't walk out. The sermon's a little long at 22 minutes. I couldn't get into anything else. Okay. Ooh, very subtle. Oh, you like it?
The lights.
Thank you.
Those are really nice. I like those.
In case you didn't know it was autumn. Good morning. It's great to be with you. We ring this bell 3 times. The first is to call us back into covenant. We are on the unceded land of the Muwekwa tribe of the Ohlone people. They were displaced, colonized, their land taken. Now they seek to regain their land as well as pass on their heritage, customs, and culture to their descendants. Everything we do to restore their rights, equality, and sovereignty is working our way back into the covenant. The second bell calls us into a relationship with ourselves and one another, to recognize broken promises, unhealed hurt, lingering scars where being right was more important than being whole. We intentionally gather to invite an ever-widening circle of compassion, commitment, and solidarity until we are all beloved to one another. It is what it is. We need a machine that does it, okay? And the third calls us into a relationship with our children and our children's children out to the 7th generation, helping us to realize that what we do now or fail to do will be felt by those who come after us.
Good morning. I'm going to give you some theological language here, and it's from the book Love is at the Center. It's a set of theological introductions, I guess, about love. And this one was written by the Reverend Adam Robersmith, who I knew from seminary. Reverend Robersmith says that the community that he is most related to when home is the non-human natural world, lichened on trunks of trees, deer, bears, mosses, plants and animals that are his nearest neighbors. It teaches him about community and connection. He asks, what can the natural world tell us about love? We participate in ecology using water and food. When healthy, a system can act to preserve its own dynamic balance. Love is the active realization of these relationships. He asks, what if what we perceive as love is also nurture and mutuality and sustainability and balance embedded in networks of relationships? What the natural world can tell us about love is that we can recognize love as something more than our own feelings. If love is the very best of relatedness, then love is at the center of life itself and networked through our entire existence. So, a good message from Adam Robersmith. I've long observed that animals show feelings of care and love to others in their species and sometimes with human beings. The loss of a pet can sometimes be as difficult to bear as the loss of a human loved one. I'm intrigued by this essay's suggestion that love is the network of our entire natural world. Today's service will speak about Indigenous people who long developed relationships with the natural world and revered its patterns. I believe they would have recognized the kind of love that the natural world can teach us, the love that Reverend Robert Smith has written of. So that is the call to worship. We'll now move into the chalice lighting. Please join with me in reciting these words which call us together as a community and with Unitarian Universalists all across the globe.
There's no slide.
Okay. You don't have that slide? There wasn't a slide? Okay. All right, I'll say the words then. We light this chalice to remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are all one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, to live lives full of goodness and love because that is how we will become the best people we can be. I see you guys have that memorized. Very good. Okay.
Good morning, friends. Welcome to Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Jay Steele. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm a member of the board. We are so glad you joined us this morning. I know all of you had busy lives, and it's nice that you took some time out to join us. I'm going to start out by highlighting some current announcements. This coming Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, we are all invited to Coyote Hills for a bring your own picnic lunch. Admission to the park is free because it's Green Friday. Everybody knows Coyote Hills, right? I presume everybody does. Ariel will be there with a box of hot coffee starting at 11. Look for our pop-up tent hanging the Progress Pride flag. Also on December 1st, Sunday at 5:30, we're having a potluck dinner here at Cole Hall. The focus of the potluck will be sharing our gratitudes. There'll be supplies on hand to wrap gifts, and please RSVP for the potluck through the link in Week on the Peak. MPUC's annual cookie decorating party is coming up here in Cole Hall on Saturday, December 14th, starting at 3:30. We'll have supplies to decorate cookies. We hope you'll bring some plain cookies to share. That's December 14th to get you in the mood for the Christmas spirit. Please silence your electronic devices. Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are people who are coming at truth from different paths. We gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs to affirm and promote the inherent worth of every person. Together, we see our job as to love the hate out of the world, heal the hurt in ourselves and one another, and be the change we'd like to see in the world. If you're our guest for the first time, we welcome you. Here's a bit of information on our hybrid services for you folks in Zoomlandia as well as here. We use chat in Zoom or a book near the welcome table to share joys and concerns, personal milestones of importance, which will be read aloud in the service. We also will have social hour after the service, where we get to visit with one another in breakout rooms on Zoom or on the patio. The worship host, my friend David, will give you more information about this immediately after the service. Someone from our membership team, that would be Xiao Yu and Chelsea, I think. Hello. We'll put a link to our weekly newsletter in chat so you can see all the events coming up. We encourage you to join anything that speaks to you. We have a welcome email, welcome@mpUUC, to request a newsletter, any information be sent to you. If you're here in person, our welcome table, with Xiao Yu and Chelsea, is right over there where you can sign up to receive a newsletter or ask any questions. We are so glad to be together today. Let's end by asking everybody in Zoomlandia and everybody in Cole Hall to wave to one another and feel the joy of being part of one large, beloved community. Welcome and thank you to our members and friends near and far.
Wait, hold on. Pardon me? Okay. You guys all get to sing along. If you don't know the song, don't worry about that. You can be the drum section. And the drum section is really easy. This is, let me hear you. Ready? Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I feel your heartbeat. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Mother, I hear you in the river song. Eternal waters flowing on and on. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Father, I see you when the eagle flies. Light of the Spirit gonna take us higher. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Again, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Big breath. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Give yourselves a hand. That was good.
Well done. I think that's the first time that we sung that one, and you guys did a great job. And thanks to Joanne. Okay, the Time for All Ages is a story called The Hummingbird and the Jaguar. Traditionally, this Native American story was told to the children of by their grandmother. One day, there was a big fire in the forest. All the animals fled in terror in all directions because it was very violent. Suddenly, a jaguar saw a hummingbird pass over its head, but in the beak, he was going in the opposite direction towards whatever the fire rather than going away like everyone else. Whatever happened, the hummingbird wouldn't stop. Moments later, the jaguar saw him pass again, this time going in the opposite direction, away from the flames. He saw such comings and goings until the jaguar asked the bird about this odd behavior. "What are you doing?" The hummingbird said, "I'm going to the lake. I fill my beak with water and throw it on the fire to put it out." The jaguar laughed. "Are you crazy? Do you think you can put out the fire alone with your very small beak?" "No, I can't," the tiny bird replied, "but the forest is my home. It feeds me, it shelters my family. I'm very grateful for that. And I help the forest by pollinating its flowers. I am part of the forest, and the forest is part of me. I know I can't put out the whole fire, but I must do my part." At that moment, the forest spirits who were listening were moved by the bird's devotion to the forest. Miraculously, they sent a torrential downpour, which put an end to the great fire. The grandmother would conclude, Do you want to attract miracles into your life? Do your part. You have no responsibility to save the world by finding the solutions to all problems, but to attend to your particular corner of the universe. As each person does that, the world saves itself. Okay. You like that story? Okay. You just picture that little hummingbird going back and forth with 2 drops of water in its beak. So we take up a collection. Now I'm going into the practice of generosity. We take up a collection on Sundays for the simple reason that our purpose in gathering is for more than ourselves. We want to make sure that the ministries that we need, the ones that infuse worth and dignity into our children, our youth, our programs of learning and leadership, and our ministries of anti-oppression and our work in the larger world are in place to meet the needs of others. We hope you'll make a contribution towards these worthy causes by mailing your check to Mission Peak UU congregation at the address that was on the screen. Thank you for supporting and sustaining the efforts of our members, friends, and staff. Your contributions make loving, learning, and leadership more possible.
One of the things that allows us to find hope and meaning, especially in the hard times, is the love and support we show one another. If you have a joy or concern that by sharing with this caring community might bring the encouragement or resilience you are needing, please write it briefly now in the chat. Please write your name and whether you're sharing is a joy or concern. If you are here in person, you can use the book by the welcome table. Please write clearly. If you would like to place a stone for a joy or concern, you may do so while the music plays. If your need is personal, you can also send an email to our minister for a follow-up conversation. Joanne. Okay, a joy from Paul Davis. Tomorrow evening, Barbara and I will be representing Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in the Interfaith Thanksgiving service at Niles Discovery Church, 7 p.m. I will also be playing in the orchestra accompanying the choir.
And one last stone for all of those joys and sorrows that are still kept in the silent sanctuary of our hearts.
Here's a reading for reflection. This is a quote from Black Elk, Oglala Sioux spiritual leader, about 100 years ago or more. What is life? It is the flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in wintertime. It is a little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. The true peace, the first peace, which is the most important, is that which comes within the souls of people when they realize their relationship, their oneness with the universe and all its powers. And when they realize that at the center of the universe dwells Wakantanka, the Great Spirit. And this center is really everywhere. It is within each of us. This is the real peace. And the others are but reflections of this. The second piece is that which is made between two individuals. And the third is that which is made between two nations. But above all, you should understand that there can never be a peace between nations until there is known that true peace, which, as I have often said, is within the souls of men. End quote.
You think you own whatever land you land on, and the earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. You think the only people who are people are the people who look and think like you. Oh, but if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you will learn things you never knew, you never knew. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon? Or ask the grinning bobcat why he grins? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Come, run the hidden pine trails of the forest. Come, taste the sun-sweet berries of the earth. Come and roll in all the riches all around you. And for once, never wonder what they're worth. The rainstorm and the river, they're my brothers. The heron and the otter are my friends. And we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon? Or let the eagle tell you where he's been? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? How high can a sycamore grow? If you cut it down, then you'll never know. And you'll never hear the wolf cry to the blue corn moon, for whether we have white or copper skin, we need to sing with all the voices of the mountain. We need to paint with all the colors of the wind. You can own the earth, and still all you'll own is dirt until you can paint with all the colors of the wind.
representing the innate goodness and morality of primitive people living in harmony with nature. Some Europeans used the term to describe the indigenous peoples of North America. The noble savage myth says they're honorable, bold, proud, and independent, of stately bearing. Their leaders were gifted orators, their warriors brave, their princesses beautiful. Creatures of innocence and simplicity, they lived from a bounty of the land, waters, and sky. Here's an illustration I did of the noble savage concept. Thank you, David. Those are all Sioux Indian chiefs. Many European authors of the Romantic period, the early 19th century, excuse me, used the noble savage idea to express a longing for a deep connection to nature that was vanishing with the Industrial Revolution. In America, the painter George Catlin made admirable portraits of the Indians back then. David, there he is. This is a chief of the Nez Perce. And the next one, this is a chief's wife of the Blackfeet. In 1784, the United States became a newly independent country. We proclaimed equality and democracy to the world. The fact that the white race was dominating the American Indians posed a difficulty. During the 1820s, as Andrew Jackson was removing the Indians of the South, an origin myth of the United States appeared. It harmonized the high-minded language of our nation's founding with the facts on the ground. The novelist James Fenimore Cooper was a prime inventor and purveyor of the new myth. He was a wealthy land speculator in upstate New York. Cooper began writing a series of 5 historical romances in 1823. They were set during the French and Indian War 75 years earlier, when Britain defeated France and gained Canada and all the land east of the Mississippi. Native American allies had fought on both sides. The most famous of Cooper's 5 best-selling novels was The Last of the Mohicans in 1826. The Mohicans were an Algonquin tribe of east central New York and parts of New England. In the story, the last noble and pure native, the chief of the Mohicans, dies after fighting alongside the English. He had adopted a white youth he named Hawkeye as a son and affirms their kinship at the end of his life. An old Delaware sage prophesies, quote, "The pale faces are masters of the earth, and the time of the red man has passed." Readers actually came to believe this invented tale had happened. And so, in James Fenimore Cooper's fictional Birth of America, the European settlers were innocently following their destiny. They had learned all the natives had to teach, and the two races were symbolically joined, though not through intermarriage. Now it was only natural for the original inhabitants of the land to disappear. The local newspapers of the time also promoted the idea that the native peoples were vanishing. It all gave a soft glow to what was actually less than inspiring. White settlers were invading, attacking, and squatting on the land of indigenous peoples, in some cases deliberately trying to exterminate them and bringing them wasting disease. There were rationalizations for appropriating native lands. Thomas Jefferson promoted the agrarian social ideal that family farming would result in widespread property ownership, political decentralization, and strong moral character. As president, he championed U.S. expansion into the West. Then there was scientific racism, in quotes, a totally unscientific belief in European ethnic superiority. But white supremacy had been the real rationale for the English stealing native lands. The pretty autumn story of Thanksgiving is partially true. David? That's a 1912 painting. Indigenous peoples were, in general, welcoming when the Europeans first arrived, and both sides benefited from trade. The local natives helped the newcomers establish thriving colonies independent of England within a few years. Only later were the Indian nations provoked to war by the colonists. Let's consider just one example of the treachery of whites and mistreatment of the Indians. When the Pilgrims or Puritans landed at Plymouth, Massachusetts, in 1620, they were in danger of starving until saved by Tisquantum, an Indian who resided with the Wampanoag people. Wampanoag. In October of the next year came the first Thanksgiving. About 90 Wampanoag and their chief joined the Pilgrims for 3 days of feasting. Things deteriorated, however, when disease brought by Europeans devastated the Indians. In 1631, the Puritan minister Increase Mather wrote that he believed a smallpox epidemic was an act of God against the, quote, quarrelsome Indians, end quote, to support the colonists' claim to the land. Relations worsened. The Wampanoag resented the expansion of Puritan settlements, especially when they began using military force to coerce its sale. In 1675, excuse me. In 1675, the government of Plymouth Colony executed 3 Wampanoags. They were charged with murder, but historians debate the fact. The Wampanoag chief, Philip, his real name Metacom, retaliated by leading his people and other nations to war. The colonists had some tribes, such as the Mohawks, on their side. In King Philip's War, or the First Indian War, several thousand on both sides were killed and dozens of Puritan settlements destroyed before the Wampanoag alliance was defeated 14 months later. Thousands of natives were also lost to illness, slavery, or fleeing to other regions. Near the end of the war, a dastardly genocide was committed by the colonists. This was the Great Swamp Massacre of 1675. The Narragansett Indians had signed a treaty of neutrality with Massachusetts Bay Colony in October 1675, but the settlers still distrusted them. The next month, the governor of Plymouth Colony led a combined force of Massachusetts and Connecticut militia against the tribe. They cornered them at Great Swamp in Rhode Island. It was a cold December, and the swamp had frozen over. The colonial force of 1,000 found the Narragansett Fort on December 19th and attacked. 100 warriors and 70 colonists died in the battle, but some 50 warriors and 600 women, children, and elderly. Oh, thank you, sweetie. Oh, you even opened it for me. Big mistake. Yeah, there was a battle, but then about 100 warriors and 50 warriors and 500 women, children, and elderly also perished when they were burned alive. The fort was torched and anyone who tried to escape was shot down. Most of the tribe's winter stores were also destroyed. Native Americans had a different concept of land ownership than Europeans. They believed it was a shared resource owned by a group of people and could not be privately held. They viewed the earth as a relative, like a mother, with whom they had a mutually beneficial relationship and cared for it. Native Americans did not subdue the countryside or the creatures on it. They thought that spirits dwelled in the land, and some of it was sacred if it contained the graves of the dead. The Christian settlers had a totally different outlook. They read Genesis 1:26. God said, "Let man have dominion over the whole earth," and took this as free license rather than an appointment as caretakers. There's a slide where this is still harkened back to. And the Native Americans were not sovereigns in their own land. They were considered heathens. As Deuteronomy 12:29 commanded in regards to the idolatrous Canaanites, quote, "When the Lord your God cuts off before you the nations whom you go in to dispossess, and you dwell in their land, do not be ensnared and inquire about their gods," end quote. Under white man law, the colonial governments had the power to authorize the alienation of any indigenous territory within their borders, which were considered virgin land. In the New Testament, John 3:18 is plain spoken about the opinion of those outside the faith. Whoever does not believe is condemned already. As a Puritan minister and physician, Michael Wigglesworth wrote in 1662, Indian lands were, quote, "a waste and howling wilderness, where none inhabited but hellish fiends and brutish men that worship devils," end quote. The only duty the Christians had towards the Native Americans was try to convert them not only to Christianity, but to the white man's way of life. Indians who converted were called praying Indians and considered traitors by others of their people. When the English settlers arrived, the original 13 colonies had at least 3 million Native Americans. By the time of the American Revolution, 150 years later, the population had dropped to around 150,000 due to disease, displacement, and genocide. Beginning with Tecumseh's War in 1811 through the Second Creek War in Alabama, 1836, simultaneous conflicts in the Midwest and Southern U.S. resulted in the defeat of Native Americans in those regions. Some 100,000 American Indians were forcibly removed from what is now the eastern United States to the Indian Territory or Oklahoma along the Trail of Tears. By the middle of the 19th century, U.S. policymakers had become impatient with the slow progress of their plans to civilize indigenous groups, who insisted on maintaining their traditional way of life. The frustration was shown in a new stereotype. Noble savage had been bad enough, a backhanded compliment, but now they were called wretched Indians. Charles Dickens, the most popular British writer of the mid-1800s, captured the change in attitude in his 1853 essay, The Noble Savage. It reads in part, quote, "I have not the least belief in the noble savage. I consider him a prodigious nuisance. He is a savage, cruel, false, thievish, murderous. As mere animals, they are wretched creatures, very low in the scale and very poorly formed, and miserable nature. The drawing of any comparison of advantage between the tenor of this swinish life and the blemishes of civilization is whimpering, maudlin admiration," meaning weakly emotional. "His virtues are a fable, his happiness a delusion, his nobility nonsense. The world will be all the better when his place knows him no more," end quote. Sorry, I had to read that actually.
Charles Dickens wrote that?
Yeah, Charles Dickens. He's good with words. Unfortunately, he used them there as a weapon. The Indian Wars of the West began during the Civil War in 1862 and ended in South Dakota in 1890 with minor fights into the 1920s. This was the period of the famous Battle of the Little Bighorn, Custer's last stand, 1876. Custer's force of 210 U.S. cavalry died to the last man when they attacked a camp of massed Lakota, Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. Over 40 million bison were purposely eradicated, killed off by white sharpshooters, some encouraged by government agents who offered bounties. Although it was never official U.S. policy to kill buffalo in order to subdue Native Americans on the plains, the Army was certainly conscious of it. In the 1870s, sometimes 5,000 buffalo were slaughtered in one day. Here's a coin we made, 1913. The next slide. You've probably seen this, the Indian head nickel. That was minted from 1913 to 38. In 1884, only 325 buffalo were left. Today we have 500,000 of the 2,000-pound beasts bred as livestock. Some of them weigh 2,400 pounds. During the Indian Wars of the West, an estimated 2,300 U.S. Army soldiers and white civilians were killed, and 5,300 Native Americans. Twice that many were wounded. There were, excuse me, I'm really sorry. There were cold-blooded massacres of Indian non-combatants by the U.S. Army. In the 1863 Bear River Massacre in Idaho, some 250 Shoshone were killed when their encampment was attacked. At Sand Creek, Colorado in 1864, a village of Cheyenne and Arapaho was destroyed, with as many as 600, mostly women and children, killed. At the Marias Massacre of 1870 in Montana, a camp of sleeping Blackfeet was attacked with about 200 slaughtered, mostly women, children, and old men. And at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, in the bitter December of 1890, nearly 300 starving Lakota Sioux who had left the reservation were tracked down and killed by soldiers. The cavalrymen did not discriminate between warriors and women and children. The Indians also committed atrocities. In the 1862 Minnesota Massacre, the Dakota Sioux attacked encroaching settlers. Warriors killed 600 to 700 men, women, and children, and 40,000 were driven out. In the Mountain Meadow Massacre in Utah, 1857, Ute Indians ambushed a Morgan wagon train, killing as many as 140 immigrants. And the seemingly endless raids by Apaches in Arizona and New Mexico from 1861 to 86 left 187 settlers dead that we know of. But there's no equivalency for the broken treaties on the part of the United States, diabolical legal machinations by legislatures, the white man's lust for gold, and genocidal intentions. These were beyond excuse. The Native American population declined by more than half between 1800 and 1900, with fewer than 238,000 remaining. Could the result have been different when the white and native cultures met? Had the Indians been able to unite with a European ally or amongst themselves, they would have been a daunting force, especially in the early years. But Native Americans were not peacefully coexisting before the Europeans arrived, a myth that still lives on. They could be brutal to each other, even enslaving captives, and this persisted after the white invasion. So the settlers were able to make allies of some and fight against others, picking them off piecemeal. This was similar to the way Cortez and his 450 Spanish soldiers had defeated the Aztec Empire back in 1519 by allying themselves with historic enemies. The few times the Indians of the United States united were too little, too late. But war with the whites only accounted for 5 to 10% of their losses. Obliteration from disease probably doomed them from the start. A lack of technology was also a hindrance. And it is too much to expect that the Europeans could have been more collegial and fair-handed, given their possessive culture and damning religion. Indians were pushed from the east to the barren west, and most of the reservations were located in remote areas unfit for agriculture or any kind of investment or development. There has been a precipitous drop in the population of Indian communities, deterioration of their living conditions, low economic status, and loss of political influence. American Indians remain in serious survival and development crisis. The slaughter of the Indians, attacks on their non-combatants, use of starvation as a weapon, forced relocation, forced cultural assimilation, and unjust treatment constitute de facto genocides under the terms of the UN Convention. Of course, these international norms did not exist before 1948. White missionaries generally failed to make many converts of the Indians. One native who was given a Bible dug a hole and tossed it in, announcing it deserves a decent burial. On the other hand, many white people have found the spirituality of the Native Americans inspiring. I was one of these. I heard the 1854 speech of Chief Seattle in the chapel at college in my senior year. A Unitarian Universalist minister read it. Seattle had fostered friendly relations with the settlers in Oregon and Washington. Asked to sell tribal land in Oregon, Chief Seattle responded to the U.S. Commissioner in part, quote, "How can you buy or sell the land, the sky? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle," excuse me, that's quite touching to me, "every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every meadow, every humming insect, all are holy in the memory and experience of my people. We are part of the earth and it is part of us. If we sell you our land, remember that the air shares its spirit with all the life that it supports. The wind that gave our grandfather his first breath also received his last sigh. Your destiny is a mystery to us. What will happen when the buffalo are all slaughtered? What will happen when the secret corners of the forest are heavy with the scent of many men, and the view of the ripe hills is blotted with talking wires, telegraphs? The end of living and the beginning of survival. When the last red man has vanished with this wilderness and his memory is only the shadow of a cloud moving across the prairie, will these forests still be here? We love this earth as a newborn loves its mother's heartbeat. So if we sell you our land, love it as we have loved it. Preserve the land for all children and love it as God loves us. There's only one God. No man, be red man or white man, can be a, excuse me, this is quite touching me. No red man or white man can be apart. We are all brothers after all, end quote. I have personally met two American Indian chiefs, and I'd like to wrap up with telling you about them. The first was during a vacation in Yosemite Valley with my family in 2004. We met Phil Johnson, leader of 400 members of the Miwok people who now reside outside the park. The tribe used to live in Yosemite Valley. After attempts by the U.S. cavalry to evict them failed, they were allowed to stay after Yosemite became a national park in 1890. The Miwok remained as a tourist attraction. Then, in 1953, only those who were park employees were allowed to stay, and their camp was destroyed. When we saw him, Phil Johnson was serving as a U.S. Park Service ranger, conducting interpretive talks at a reconstructed Miwok village on the valley floor. Chief Phil had a quiet and calm demeanor and a very respectful way of teaching the children. After telling them all about the resources available to the natives, he would ask how they would accomplish something. This was in lieu of outright lecturing them. He also lit a fire using friction between two sticks and some fine kindling. It didn't take that long, maybe a minute. There's a picture of him. That's Chief Phil. There he is, wearing the garb of a laborer working for white ranchers after the tribe was dispossessed. Then in October 2012, I attended the gathering of the Ohlone people at Coyote Hills Regional Park here in Fremont. I was standing behind a large crowd watching the dancing in native dress when an 88-year-old Ohlone lady offered me her chair. I declined, but she said, "I've been sitting long enough." She stood right next to me during the rest of the ceremonies, narrating what the dances meant and the creation story. She had been in Indian school as a girl and was not allowed to speak her language. Later, she became a school teacher herself. At the end of the festivities, she graciously asked if I would like to meet their chief. I said yes. What an honor. And there's a picture of him and her and me. From experience, I know now that the American Indians are noble Americans indeed. Noble meaning possessing fine personal qualities and high moral principles. How they can look on a white man with any kindness is beyond me. But a love of community and naturally grows from the heart of this people. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Ancient mother, I hear you calling. Ancient mother, I hear your song. Ancient mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient mother, I taste your tears. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Ancient mother, I hear you calling. Ancient mother, I hear your song. Ancient mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient mother, I taste your tears. Mother, I hear you in the river song. Eternal waters flowing on and on. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Ancient mother, I hear you calling. Ancient mother, I hear your song. Ancient mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient mother, I taste your tears. Father, I see you when the eagle flies. Light of the Spirit's gonna take us higher. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho.
Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Quite beautiful. Thank you, Barbara. Here's a short quote by Chief White Eagle of the Ponca tribe in Nebraska. Quote, "When you are in doubt, be still and wait. When doubt no longer exists for you, then go forward with courage. So long as mists envelop you, be still. Be still until the sunlight pours through and dispels the mists, as it surely will. Then act with courage." End quote.